Author's note. I'm certainly less author than transcriber/editor, but for the sake of understanding I will accept this title. As with most manuscripts brought to me by Halifax, who I've come to believe is either angel or demon, Jack's account takes place elsewhere. I feel the need to explain because you'll notice similar things in Jack's journal like cigarettes, heroin, Oldsmobiles, and jazz clubs. Even the year Jack writes in, 1997, is one of our years, and in the not-so-distant past. However, there are demons. There are typewriters you can sort of go into. There are quadraphonic tape decks and a giant beast in Chicago that heals with its red-colored breath. America, in Jack's world, is split 3 ways with 2 other countries. I try only to edit what must be when it comes to translating these accounts, but with this one, I wanted to avoid the confusion due to crossovers. How many readers do you suppose I will lose, say, when they run into Ronald Reagan's son, Donald? Ronald Reagan has 2 sons in our world, Ron and Michael, who became president and changed the title to proconsul. All the while, this story is set in Chicago, a very real place not so far from where I live. I digress, but I hope you will now have the comfort of knowing this is like our world, but this is not our world. And I hope this will help you enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed translating it with the instruments I found in Wyoming 4 years ago. J.F. We now present a quadraphonic production of Junkie Jack. 1. Me, I live by the proconsul's pet in Chicago with a broken heart. We call it a pet, though it's more like a giant demon. They say it breathes out the sins of the world. Its scream wakes me up every hour when it exhales that red smog over the city, so only sleep I get is 40 minutes ago. I hear the hell rattle of its chains now, chains thick as an airplane. Gotta be that big to keep a creature taller than the Sears Tower enthralled. I only write about the monster because every time it screams its grief and coats the city in red, I remember WHINNIE. It's screaming now as I peek out the blinds. I can see its teeth facing the sky in that eternal grimace. The smog puffs upward and outward. Free healthcare comes with chains. Tit for tat, Junkie Jack. Enough about that. I want to tell you about WHINNIE. She was a good girl, did good things, and talking about her makes me feel good. I was working a job for Tony TWOFINGERS. He knew these kids were scraping off the top of his backdoor liquor store, dealing no big whoop, a bottle here, a bottle there, carton of cigarettes maybe. Tony didn't mind. He looked at it like giving back to the community. Tony thought it was all understood. He gets in tax-free booze, sells it marked up but not at market price. Everybody wins. Hell, he's even letting some youngsters get a thrill out of the deal. He did it, I did it, everyone fucking did it. That's what you do when you got too much sperm clogging you up and jerking off's lost its splendor. You look for trouble. Tony TWOFINGERS, as I said, was unbothered until one of the kids started giving the business to his daughter. "It's that Mazzaretti fuck, Jack," he said, pacing back and forth on the hardwood, smoking all the cigarettes I put out to keep appearances with clients. I was about out, and the motherfucker just kept on, whining about killing this kid, where's his daughter at, and why would she do it to him? I shrugged and lit one myself, kicking my legs up on the desk and adjusting my hat. "All right, Tony," I said, "scare him, shake him up a bit." "I want you to fucking kill him, Jack. I said that, didn't I? I fucking said it." I pointed with the cigarette. "You don't really, Tony, so shoot straight. I work at a credit a week." "A credit?" "You know my rates, Tony. Don't waste my time." I spread my arms. He stared at me a moment. The scream sounded, and the room momentarily flashed deeper red, almost like headlights passing by, though we were 6 floors up in the Smith Corona building where I rented my walk-in closet of an office. Tony looked to the source of the red light, blinked, then shook his head at the ground. "I want you to tell me what they're doing. Follow around a bit, snap a few pictures, and when you're done, let me know. Then you scare him." I nodded. All right, Tony, you bring my retainer and replacements for the 20 cigarettes you smoked, you fuck, I thought, but let die on my tongue. Tony Two Fingers put out the cigarette he held in those precious last 2 fingers, then fished in his front pocket for a wad of money-clipped cash. He paid $2,000, 2 credits worth. You might think that's steep, and well, it is, but I'm not giving shoe shines here. I'm invading privacy, which no one appreciates but the client. Tony Two Fingers slid the money over. I went to take it, but he held it firm. I don't need anyone freaked out, Tony said. I kind of scowled at him. You said kill first, then scare. Now nobody freaked out, and there are some pretty fucking wide gaps between those 3 things. I know, okay? I'm fucking stressed, Jack, I'm sorry. Tony itched at his scalp with his ringed 5-fingered hand. Look, I know the kid's parents. He's a good kid. Just needs to understand you can't get the fucking cream off the top, then drink the goddamn cappuccino down too. I nodded my head in mock approval. That's a winning idiom, Tony. Can I have my fucking money now? He let me have it all right, then he left. He didn't tell me his daughter had 2 names. I'd seen her. She played saxophone at the Radar Lounge on North Broadway in West Belle Plaine. She was damn good, too. I went there when I didn't have any jobs, when I wanted time to relax, smoke, maybe do a shot in the bathroom, and fall out in a booth. Everyone deserves a break. Just because mine came from junk doesn't mean it wasn't earned. She would play it naked, in Dorothy Take Me Home high heels. She had the kind of blonde hair you could make a jacket out of for some rich fuck on North Michigan. She'd play with eyes closed, walking all through the bar, the kind of sax playing that has an attitude, if you know what I'm saying, and has a fucking growl to it, like the sax has been smoking its whole life. A few weeks before Tony Two Fingers stepped into my office, I'd just closed a case, and I was treating myself to a bit of a vacation, something like 3 days. I bought a foil full of black tar. Thank Christ, you didn't have to worry about fentanyl sneaking into your shit anymore. I'd take the war any day for good dope free of that shit. Yes, I know fentanyl is a good time if it doesn't kill you, but the shit kills so goddamn many, and then guess what? Can't get fixed. Junkie Jack, he wasn't the type of user wanted to die. He was here to get high. So I shot in the bathroom of the Radar Lounge. Little old Petey was on the piano and is hitting just right along with the dope hallelujahs all around. That's where I was when I sat down in my velvet booth, lit me that aftershot smoke, and leaned back. But before the nod could take me, I heard little old Petey on the microphone. Yeah, all right. Tonight we got a little sister who's looking to show you the whole damn universe if you can dig it. He was a black man with a voice that sounded like Mark Sandman, that guy from the jazz outfit Morphine. She stepped out, sack slung across her back, strapped between exposed breasts. Those Take Me Home heels sparkled in the red light. She stopped there in front of little old Petey's piano and panned her glare from one end of the bar to the other like some kind of predatory lizard. I couldn't believe my dope-swollen eyes. Her eyes were ruby red like her heels and like something else I couldn't quite place. She flipped her thick blonde hair back, put the reed to her mouth, and tore a ripping wail from the saxophone like her breath was painful, like her breath was forcing it to give birth, man. Yeah, if you can fucking dig it. I went back those 3 days I'd set aside for vacation and found myself taking another day off, then another, though my junk habit could not afford such luxury, and the Radar Lounge was a pay-at-the-door kind of place. On the 6th day, though, the naked saxophone player with the yellow mink coat head of hair was gone, and being a man living in the healing air of the proconsul's pet, Chicago has the highest cost of living in the world for this reason specifically, I had to get back to work. But I thought of her, and I dreamed about her. You can junk flush any rat out of Junkie Jack, but this one kept on chewing its way back. And so I found her. Or she found me, because I wasn't looking. I needed money and I needed her. She turned herself into both for me, and at the time I thanked her for that. The night after Tony Two Fingers came into my office and I'd collected several locations Tony knew his daughter to frequent, I drove over to the docks. No harm in going for the jugular on your first go. Tony told me this is where Winnie went most with the Maserati kid. I stayed far enough away to keep the Chicago port in sight while keeping myself out of its sight. I dug down in my Oldsmobile 88. Yes, I did more than PI work and shooting junk. I like cars. Snorted speed, shot smack twice, and didn't see dick in the way of Winnie or her alleged lover. I smoked and picked at my fingernails till they bled, until the sun shone through the red smog, making the world a tinge brighter. In Chicago, you got used to the darkness, and you got used to the sun being little more than one of many curtains drawn away. I went to the McDonald's where Winnie ate breakfast. No luck. I drove by boyfriend's house. No Toyota Century, the car Winnie drove. Not bad for a kid. I didn't know yet that this kid was the woman who'd brought me back to the Radar Lounge till I ran out of money. When the speed wore off, well, when I kind of rubbed the shit off with a heavy dose of junk, I went to my apartment and waited for the proconsul's pet to scream and release its 9 o'clock steam, then went to sleep. I'd try again tomorrow. Tomorrow came and I woke up late. I had that wretched feeling that comes from a day spent asleep and the sick was on me, so I tied off and shot the cure. Funny how it works like that. Makes you wonder if you never ran out of dope and took care of yourself, if maybe this side of things wouldn't be so bad. Of course, consensus leans to the contrary, but hey, I'm an optimist when it comes to heroin. Junkie Jack says yes to smack. Think about it. I sleep all day. Nothing wrong with sleeping all day, right? But I felt like a big piece of shit. Why is that exactly? Who's to say? Maybe it's society's daytime fetish. Maybe it's how humans are programmed from the get-go. All I know is if I sleep all day, I'm fucking depressed for no good goddamn reason. Because if the reasons I stated are the reasons, I don't fucking agree. But this is a chemical problem. My brain short-circuiting, sending a message. Hey, fuckbag, you gotta be up during the daytime so you can hunt, or whatever. So now I'm taking away happy chemicals. Well, as I said, I don't agree with whoever's in charge up there, so I've got this nifty little tool. External chemicals make you feel right as rain. Nothing's problematic when you're on good dope. It's bad dope you gotta watch out for. It gives you the rage and the itches. If we have the chemicals outside and the works inside are broken, unreliable, and basically traitors in my experience, then why not be a junkie? I went to a few of Winnie's other hot spots, including a shit show pay-to-play place called the Elbow Room, where she was not. And I eventually ended up at the docks for another long night of amphetamine-induced interest. But when I got there, red haze like a see-through shift draped over the world, Winnie's Toyota Century faced the water, and it looked like it was rocking. So she was getting some action from the little shit. Fine by me. I was only here to take photos, see what they were up to, and wait her out in my car, then follow. I got my camera out, put the long focus lens on, hooked the strap around his shoulder, then got out of the Oldsmobile. The Toyota squeaked as it swayed back and forth. I looked through the camera as I neared a small alley between two warehouses. Tried the shot, but still wasn't close enough, and the windows were all fogged up. I looked around, walked forward, tipping my hat down over my face, pulling my collar up. 6 barrels were standing by a parked Crown forklift, and I tried the shot again. No good, damn it. I inched over into plain sight, where the asphalt road turned to dirt. Tony asked for photos. He didn't ask me to be discreet, and I'd used up what patience I had for discretion. I looked through the sight, caught a glimpse of an arched back, something golden, and next thing I knew, I was eating dirt. It went up my nose and would have stabbed up into my eyes had I not had the camera, a $1,500 camera, now broken, in front of them. Something had a firm grip around both my legs, as if a hand had reached up from the ground and pulled me under. I swallowed earth and rocks, nearly choking on both as I was pulled further down, the pressure mounting around my body, crushing and suffocating. Rocks cut up my sides and 2 of my fingernails ripped free. When I finally sensed air around me again, it was dark, cool, and not the docks, but a cavernous hall lit only by red crystals set in ridged walls that reminded me of the saxophone player's eyes. The something that held me around the middle was warm. I clutched my injured hand in the other, wailing as I spit chunks out of my mouth. My fingers, my fucking fingers! You will not harm her, a voice said, very fucking loud, echoing through the caverns, ringing in my fucking ears. Funny in these moments, the way you react. I almost think it's kind of defense mechanism against things that don't make a whole lot of sense. Shaking from the pain at the tips of my fingers, I checked my camera. Busted. Then I looked down at the giant black hand that held me. I followed the hand down a long, bony arm to a body that seemed attached to the ground below, and a head like a mound, mouth on the crown, eyes, at least 6 I could see, bedazzling the circumference of the head like diamonds in a pillar. It looked like a smaller version of the proconsul's pet, though it was still a fuck sight bigger than me. I grunted, trying out my voice, wriggling in its grip. Harm who? I said. Shit already harmed me. Her, the mouth hissed from the crown of its head, teeth jutting out like jagged icicles. In the red glow of the diamonds, I could vaguely see a shape moving in the dark behind the creature, and at first thought it was some other form of fucked up danger, but as it came close, I made out another arm. 7 fingers pulled into a fist, while a lone finger pointed up. Can you not hear her music? I raised my eyebrows, looking up, back to the creature, then gestured to the ceiling with my chin. You mean Winnie? Nah, I'm not gonna hurt her. I was here to take pictures. She's fucking somebody she's not supposed to be fucking, I guess. I don't know, they pay me and I don't ask too many questions. You think she mates with the man? Yeah, the butcher's boy, I said. The butcher's boy? The creature seemed to taunt. This one is the mayor's son. Oh, well, good to know. She is also fucking the mayor's son. I'll be sure to let Tony Two Fingers know you deserve a cut. Only trouble is, I don't know your name, what the fuck you are, and you broke my fucking camera, so you kinda owe me your cut anyway. The creature pulled me in closer to one of its many eyes. She does not mate with them. Her car was shaking, I said. I highly doubt there was a Bible's distance between them. She plays for them. She plays for me, using their ears, for I have none. You're deaf? I said, turning away from its eyes. It turned me around forcefully to face it again. What did you say? Ah, I said. Well, if that's the case, how do you know that's the butcher's boy up there? She tells me, the creature said. I'd had my share of dealings with things not from this plane, or this step, as some called it. Paranoid folk like to say a lot of demons like this got through because the typewriter network opened some kind of rent in the human soul where something could get over to our side of things. Christopher Halifax, a serial customer of mine, told me that's where the proconsul's pet came from. A monster that can heal with its breath, and that's why the leader of our dwindling country keeps it chained right here where he lives in the capital, and why Japan and China are so desperate to get a piece. You hear all sorts of stories as a PI, and not all crazy people are broke. Some have money and they put it to use, and I'll look into every manifestation of your schizophrenia if the price is right. But that's all another time, another place, another journal. This one here has to do with Winnie. I sighed. Demons aren't always sane. Better to go along with them and find a way out later. What does she play? I said. The teeth above the eyes clacked together and then ground back and forth like tectonic plates. They call it a sousaphone. Sousa, I said, but then I got it. A saxophone. Yes, that. I tried to adjust myself in the thing's grip. Listen, could you let me go? No. I will wait until she is safely away from you, and then you may go on your way. But if you pursue her further, I will bring you down again, and I might take you further, beyond your comforts. Pretty fucking far from comfort now, I said, turning my head away. What? I asked if you're a demon. To me, you are the demons. What else but a demon would be capable of chaining that which heals? I had no argument there, but that jogged my brain. Are you like the proconsul's pet? The same race? The creature sucked in air through its teeth, and the crystals and the ridged walls flickered. I am a piece. You might call me a germ. I heard the scream from the proconsul's pet, and as it sounded, the creature holding me let out a whine that shook the chamber. I waited until scream and whine both had decayed, then said, "So she's not sleeping with the men she brings here." "Women too," the creature said. "Fine, women too. She's not sleeping with them. I sense she is untainted." "I see," I said, looking up to see if there was a hole where the creature had pulled me beneath the ground and to see if I could hear the saxophone. There was no hole and no saxophone. "Can you not hear it?" the creature said, closing its eyes and swaying, letting a hot, stinking sigh out of its mouth. I tried again but could not, and hadn't it just told me it was deaf, but listens through the ears of Winnie's guests? My legs were soaked in sweat, and I was kind of over the whole ordeal. I would take the cost of the broken camera out of Tony's retainer, refund the rest, and stay far away from this Winnie, this monster, and now from Tony's shop. But a few things were irking me. I'd seen a certain head of hair inside that Toyota, and this monster had said saxophone. My girl from the Radar Lounge? I mean, what are the odds, but what are the fucking odds of a germ portion of the proconsul's pet reaching up through the ground and having a talk with me? I waited for it to pass, whatever quiet euphoria was swimming through the creature, a little fucking jealously, I'll add, every bit of junk left inside of me evaporating into a cloud of pain. It opened its eyes, looking dazed and like it had forgotten my presence. "I will take you back to the surface now. Do not seek to stop her again." "I wasn't trying to stop." "Perhaps you speak true," the creature said. "But you would have stopped her with your prying had she seen you. I've kept many away from here. The proconsul Donald Reagan allows me this private ecstasy. If it were to end..." I raised my hands, junk sick, creeping on, need for a smoke jittering and jiving in my nerves. Far be it from me to keep a fellow junkie from his or her fix. "You will not interfere again?" the creature asked. I put a hand to my heart, the one with the missing fingernails. I swear to fucking Christ. The eyes seemed to scowl. "You should not swear to having done such a thing to the Savior." I furrowed my brow, confused. "What the fuck are you talking about?" I was pulled, screaming, once more through rock, earth, and root. The hand set me down on a vacant dock. The Toyota was gone. I blew my nose, trying to clear it of dirt, wiping my weeping eyes of rock and dust. I spun around, expecting a hole from the hand of the creature, but there was only smooth dirt road. After my first gulp of that red Chicago air, I saw my fingernails growing back and felt the cuts knitting all over my body. I wish the creature had just told me to stay away without mentioning the saxophone, but now I was hooked through the bag on this just as sure as I was on the black tar I had in the car. I lit a smoke, walked back to the Oldsmobile, cooked up a shot, and thought on the girl from the Radar Lounge playing just for me, even for just a small time, in a little car by the dock. If that's all she was really doing. Unfortunately, I'd be back. Next day, I made some phone calls. Usually stay away from the phone, what with the vibrational virus pulsing through the landlines and cellular networks, but there are ways to tell if you're talking to AI or not. You have to pay attention, of course, but they'll slip eventually. "I can be of assistance," is the AI response. How can I be of assistance? Being the human. The virus doesn't always kick you over to an AI hustle, but it's the most popular version of the fuckery. I called the Radar Lounge. "Radar," the man said. "Stan speaking." "Hello, Stan. My name is Gregory Wallace of..." I looked to my cork board filled with pinned business cards. "Analog Frog over on..." "Yeah, I know where it is," Stan said. "Could you get to the point, Mr. Wallace? Big night tonight." "Oh, why's that?" Stan pushed all his air out into the receiver. "A very popular act. Now, could you tell me what you need?" I was talking like Jimmy Stewart, enjoying the frustration the slow, careful act was inciting within Stan. Well, Stan, I was wondering if you could tell me about a young woman who played there, 2 months ago. She played the saxophone, and she had these Dorothy heels, and she was, well, she... Yeah, that's Dorothy, Stan said. Playing tonight. Christ. I get the same damn phone call every day. You nerds ought to get together and go to a goddamn strip club. The line clicked. Dorothy. Interesting. I went to Ficello's and got a new suit. Big date, Jackie, said Freddie Ficello, as he held the jacket up and I put my arms through. He had thick eyebrows, did Freddie Ficello, and he always said, not that it's any of my business. Often it wasn't, but that didn't stop his asking. You could say that, Freddie, I said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. It was a royal blue tux, and it looked fine as paint. If anything was Freddie's business, it was tuxedos. Walk around a bit, Jack. I want to see if it fits just right, Freddie said, eyes only for the suit, as I stepped away and walked around the circle of the mirrored fitting room. What's her name? Freddie said, twirling his finger in the air. I spun as I walked. He shrugged. Not that it's any of my business. I thought on this a moment. A tailor is close to a therapist, at least Freddie was. You could count on him. He was the best in town, so the mafia were regular patrons, and when your customers are the kind you gotta pretend you don't know what they're up to, you tend to keep your fucking mouth shut. Guys like me just benefited from Freddie's discretion. Who goes to a shrink anyway? But it felt good to blow off some steam every once in a great while. So I didn't tell Freddie the real name I was after, Winnie, but I did tell him Dorothy. Dorothy, huh? The sax player? Heard of her? I said. Freddie fussed over the collar and the cuffs, got me to turn around again. Can't say that I have. Overheard somebody talking about a sax player out in the lobby the other day. Not that it was any of my business, but other than that, no. She know you're coming? That's why you could tell Freddie, because I could tell the guy had heard more, but he only said enough to make me feel like my girl was something special. That someone may have mentioned her in his lobby. Tony came to Ficello's too. Freddie's intel was sacred, like a secret vow, like their omerta, and every family respected that this guy made the best suits and kept all of their goddamn secrets, and if anyone fucked with him trying to pry it out, that would be one sorry fuck feeding sturgeons at the bottom of Lake Michigan. No suit man, no suits. No place to dump secrets. Yeah, she's something else, Freddie, I said. Really fucking something. You ought to come down tonight. Her hair. You gotta see her hair. You'd appreciate it. I know you would. It's like a gown for her fucking head. And when she starts whipping it around while she's playing... Freddie flicked each shoulder with his middle finger, a kind of ritual of his, I guess. Always did that at the end of the fitting, no idea why. Freddie smiled at me beneath the mustache. I might just do that, he said. One of these nights. He clutched both shoulders from behind me and spoke in a hushed tone. But tonight, you let this suit represent Freddie Ficello. You let it say, this is none of my business, I finished for him, smiling in the mirror. His face took on an exaggerated severity as he raised both hands. This is none of my business, but here I am, he said. I like to wear my tuxes for more than just whatever bullshit I bought them for, so naturally I wore my baby blue Dior tuxedo, which cost me just about 10 shy of $5,000, to my junk dealer's house. I needed something that would perk me up a bit, but didn't feel like chewing my bottom lip off, so speedballing was out. It is called Blue 7, Berian, the Slovakian smack-slinging extraordinaire said. Comes in needle. It is just what you need for a request. Stoned yet awake. He pushed both hands down for stoned, then turned them over and lifted for awake. I shook my head. I'm not shooting something that's already cooked and plunged. Berian shook his head, black curls hanging loose from his ponytail, smacking the sides of his head. Do not look at teeth of gifted horse, he said, and I raised my eyebrows at him like, are you fucking kidding me? I'll just take brown standard, Berian, if it's all the same to you, I said. Is not, he said, and the guy looked a little sweatier than usual, a little nervous. Excuse me, I said. Blue is all I have. Uh-huh, I said, and I turned away from him toward his front door. Wait, he cried. Just, Jack, I need help. I warded him off with a hand. Already on a case, Burrian, no can do. Not like that. I need you to try. Try? He nodded. Yes, try. No, I said, and I turned away. Lesson learned. Never look at the teeth of a horse and never, ever turn your back on a sweating heroin dealer. I collapsed. He must have hit me with some tranquilizer. There was a sharp pain in my ass cheek, and then I went slack. Half awake, I watched the fucker pulling the plunge back on one of those pre-filled needles. The liquid inside was blue until the red plume of my blood pulled into it. Burrian rammed it home. My mind, ketamine-addled, I guessed, held only a curiosity at that moment, wondering what this new drug would do, disregarding all the possible cousins of hepatitis playing basketball on the tip of that needle. But that blissful objectivity turned nastily subjective, quick as shit to water in the grips of junk illness. What the fuck? Burrian, you fuck! I shouted, jerking away in the moment before the serenade hummed in my blood, and then even Burrian, the Slovak raper of veins, was my friend. Oh, Jesus, I said, blinking at the powerful explosion of warm wonder expanding from my chest outward. Is good, Burrian said, eyebrows raised, encouraging. You're a no-good, damn dirty raper, I said, getting to my feet, and I'll take 20 of those. I left Burrian's with the new dope in my briefcase. The streets shone with a sheen of rain, the gutters smoking, the sky a deep red haze, painting all it touched rosé. And I was higher than I'd been in years, the kind of high you write home about, or the kind you write about in a journal if your home has given you the office due to a desperate, albeit high-functioning, junk habit. I was so clear, so able. With speed, there's always the kind of taking on of a mental illness for your energy, a trait I'm not partial to. I prefer an energetic opiate high, the kind I used to get when I was just a narco popper. But I also want the thick euphoria slathered on top that only a shot of junk can provide. Like how jerking off can never give you the spiritual shedding of skin that sex with another human can. Some heroin will give you the best of both worlds, and usually I could rely on Burrian to provide such discernibility in his product. This, though, there was no oil on top of the water here. Someone had answered the problem of fentanyl. Although I wasn't sure of the mortality rate of this stuff yet, I'd only just tried it, with blue heroin. Liquid? I'd have to go back to Burrian's and ask more questions, but for the time being, I had important business at the Radar Lounge and a nearly perfect bake in my brain I didn't want to waste on speculation. The Radar Lounge was standing room only that night, and they jacked up the price. I only got in because I know the doorman's got a taste for junk, and I gave him 2 of the needles and told him he wouldn't be sorry, unsure whether he'd go for it or not. The fuck? A guy shouted as the guard opened the velvet rope for me. Fucking just let him in, another said. The doorman stood all muscle and pinched face, denying the others their chance at Dorothy. Maybe you fucks will learn what your doorman's got a taste for next time, I said, shrugging and patting the doorman on the shoulder as I went inside. What do you have a taste for? Name your price. I shook my head, chuckling as I paid a credit to see Winnie play. If you're reading this and you're in Japan or someplace where they've trained the people to forget the US dollar, a credit is $1,000, about 160,000 yen. I wondered again how much Winnie's private concerts at the Chicago port cost, and if I'd be willing to pay it. 2. I guess by now I should explain some things in case whoever reads this does live in a place where they've changed the history like China or Japan. I know it's a lot, but if you're not sick of me yet, I figure you can stomach a little condescending American explanation. All this bother with Winnie took place in 1997. 12 years before that, in 1985, the proconsul of Chicago, Donald Reagan, ate up the role of president. America turned its sick head south to confront the fentanyl crisis rising from the border, and while we weren't looking, Japan took the west and China took the east. You could say they took advantage, but we owed them money, so fuck it, America struck a deal, sold off the fat. Good old USA and its dreams. New China declared war, and America dissolved into a thin strip from Louisiana to Minnesota called New Chicago. After we shut down the Mexican cartel, we sided with New Japan in the West, California to Nebraska, for the technological benefit, reproductive compatible flesh walls, and the big whammy of them all, Smith Corona, bought by Noboru Shinjitsu not too long before the war. Smith Corona cornered the market in the 70s with electric typewriters and nerve wires, and the typewriter network reigns with those who can write well enough to conjure up a shared space. Needless to say, I fumble my way through it, and only when I have to. Kind of like a book, the way it takes you someplace else, but the vibrational pulses running all the way up your steel spine like funny bone ticklers do something else I don't quite comprehend. But that's all just tit for tat, Junkie Jack. Don't need no more of that, as little old Petey would say. Now back to the radar lounge, where I touched God for the second time in my miserable life. I stood behind a tall, fat man chewing gum open mouth, meaty hands fishing restlessly in his pockets to jangle keys. He smelled, too, and wouldn't stop shuffling from one foot to the other, wafting a small whirl of stink all around him. "Yah, yah," he said through his chomping, eyes rolling like a mule in heat. "Yah, she only comes out a few times a year." Chomp, chomp, chomp. His friend, I guess, a thin guy with glasses, said something to him. "Yah, yah. She played at my buddy's birthday. Cost me 10 credits, he answered. So it turned out he had more reasons for my ire. He was a goddamn liar. He wore an Eddie DeVrau watch, fool's gold, the kind that could pass for a bezel with the financially retarded. I lit a smoke, hoping some of the nicotine would catch in his piece of gum and calm his incessant chewing. I could see the stage just over the man's left shoulder. Little old Petey played the piano with sunglasses on, his long face contented. You didn't want to watch little old Petey on a junk-sick night, and he didn't want to be watched. But the guy played for his pennies, as they say, and so if he was junk-sick, he was playing that goddamn piano like it could give his dried-up receptors a rain that would put the lights out. It was a kind of cruelty I tried to avoid. Owner of Radar would throw out anyone who tried to make Petey well, because he knew that he had Petey like a whore to a pimp, and he didn't want to lose that deal. I only hoped that Dorothy or Winnie, I wasn't clear on her name yet, wasn't in the same bag. Little old Petey's head snaked around to his microphone, long bony fingers still perfectly stroking the keys, fluttering and flying, spider walking, hammering, sliding, and tapping as he said, "Hey there, honey bear, can you dig a little honey bear named Dorothy who wants you to know she might be your home and ain't no place like it?" The bar erupted. Unusual for a jazz crowd, but it seemed word had got around about Dorothy, and word had wandered out of jazz mouths and into the ears of gum-chewing, key-jangling lunatics. I decided it would be best for my high and enjoyment of the show, and work on the case, to move away from the fat man. I found myself now between a woman in a flowery dress, waving golden curls this way and that, excitedly next to her fat husband, a different kind of fat, the friendly kind. These I like, the jolly fat man of the world whose fat is a product of their love of life. It resonated more with my blessedly clean heroin high, though in my natural state I am, admittedly, more of the gum chomper's ilk. Everyone watched the curtains behind little old Petey in shittering anticipation. "I just love her," the woman with the blonde curls said, dancing to some beat perceptible only to her. "Who, Dorothy?" I asked. She smiled and nodded her head. "I'm Nancy. This is Chris." Chris, the jolly fat man, waggled fingers at me and adjusted a sweating pair of glasses. His energetic wife, I assumed marriage between them, bumped into him again, and he smiled like a tickled kid. That made me feel hope for the human race, a thing like that. "Oh," Nancy said, smacking me in the shoulder 8 times in quick succession. "She's there! She's just there!" She pointed. Little old Petey was trying to say something, but it was no good over the screams once that naked leg stepped between the part of the curtains, ruby high heel glimmering in the red light of the radar lounge. Dorothy didn't smile. Her curtain of thick blonde hair flipped around like a 50s wet dream. Made me want to cry a little, seeing the radar lounge all here for Dorothy. I think it broke everyone's heart. That's why we were all there. "Now we gonna do something a little different this time, y'all," said little old Petey after the crowd had quieted some. "And don't you move, 'cause it's gonna get wild." Dorothy let her gaze slide all over the crowd. We quieted. It was 10 heartbeats before she took in a breath, but we held ours. She licked her lips, raised the reed to her mouth, and launched into the first number. At some point, the curtains opened and there was a full band and a painting behind Dorothy. The scene from The Wizard of Oz, Jade Palace in the distance, yellow brick road twisting and turning from the musicians outward. Dorothy started solo, slow, unperturbed, patient, smooth as shit. Nancy and Chris swayed beside me, and the rest of the audience pulsed like a dope-depressed heartbeat. I put in a piece of gum, chomped, and swayed with them. The band came in at a creep, tap, 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 with the brushes on the snare. The usual red light of the radar lounge lit the band, but Dorothy stepped out of it somehow, into a darker hook of stage, where a new light shone on her. Or was she putting off that blue light from her skin? Regardless, she was blue, the band was red. She blasted into the sax as the band picked up its pace. She whipped her hair around, breasts swinging, heels kicking. I found myself uncomfortably aroused. Suddenly I was aware of the separateness of myself from the other members of the audience, where before I'd felt a part of an inseparable pulsing mass, subject to the expert fingers of Dorothy's song. Nancy nudged me. I thought maybe she'd fallen out of sync too, had been aroused and made aware of it all while standing next to her husband. But when I looked at Nancy, her face was concerned, and she pointed at my left cheek. I mouthed, "What?" But she just pointed back at my cheek more urgently this time. I felt at it, thinking there was a wayward hair mucking my clean shave, but nothing. At this point, I was ready to get back to the oneness of the crowd, feel Dorothy's fingers worming into my ears, and Nancy was kind of bumming me out. But Nancy held up one finger for me to wait, pulled a small, round makeup mirror from a bag, and turned it on me. Red light coated my form, even dominating the royal blue of my tuxedo. But on my left cheek, where Nancy still pointed with her free hand, was a varicose vein in the shape of a 7, pulsing blue, just like Dorothy in the middle of her red-lit band. I covered the vein. Nancy held both hands up, curious. I went away from Nancy after that. As I said, she was bumming me out. I looked back to Dorothy. Did she seem more blue? It was hard for me to say. The clean heroin high still sang just as sweet as Dorothy's rasping hymn. I blinked my eyes, put my fingers into both. When I opened them again, there was nothing but my own awareness, an indeterminate amount of black space, and Dorothy there, glowing blue, naked but for her shoes and blues, wailing away. But the music that now cawed from the saxophone was not saxophone music. It was a low-frequency hypnotic drone, the song of everything she was. The song of everything she was. I traced the outline of the vein. It beat along to the calming canticle, and every bastard thought I'd ever had about sexual intercourse with this woman cried off like so much smoke in clean, open air. Dorothy set down her saxophone on the abyss of the ground, the instrument maintaining that pleasant drone, and then she screamed. It tore through me, that scream. It hit my bones. She screamed until I didn't care what her name was. I didn't need a name. The red smog bled from her mouth, covered the black and red, but her body stayed blue, screaming, bent double as if she'd be sick, and I stayed prisoner, unable or unwilling to move, not wanting to disturb her, unsure why I should be privy to something so terrible inside anyone, let alone this new idol to the Chicago jazz scene. The screaming broke with her voice and beat down into quiet, rasping sobs. She turned to me, one eye peeking out behind her hair. I felt naked, her looking at me like that, her only clothes a saxophone, stripped and set down on the ground without its biting tone, a lullaby replacing what tore through me and gave me an erection earlier. No torrent now, just me, naked, with this naked woman who seemed to dare me to strip down further to bear all. I did not. "I forgive that," she said, her voice thick with shed tears. "I see your resistance. You wear fewer clothes than I." "I don't care," I found myself saying. "We all know this means that you do," she said. "I want you, need you," I said, finding I was shaking. "You cannot have me," she said, and she wiped a thick gob of snot from her upper lip. "But you will always have me, just like this, just as you see me. This is always yours, but it's not even there. Not there." Sweat and red light burned my eyes, and I fell back into the swaying crowd. Dorothy's sax was strapped to her. She was playing it, and I was in the radar lounge at her sold-out show. So it had been a kind of dream, an intense nodder, brought on by the good dope and Dorothy's music. But there were tears in her eyes as she played, eyes that held mine as I stood still in that thick crowd watching her. I reached a wavering hand up to my left cheek, feeling that freak vein pulse. Dorothy nodded without missing a beat. She nodded and traced the air with a finger, the slightest deviation from the keys. It was a 7. I felt like someone had just cleaned all the dirt from my insides. When Dorothy was finished with her show, there was nothing left within but a need to see her, to understand if what I'd seen had been real, if what she did with the saxophone had some kind of healing ability, like the proconsul's pet, if that blue heroin had incited that dream within me, and if so, if she had something to do with it. I felt exhausted after all that. Her tears in the dream, and after, in reality, I guess you'd call it, were like my own tears. And though heroin usually took care of those for me, dries them up and fries whatever nerve they want to come bleeding out of, I remembered what it was like to cry, and it felt like her tears were mine that night. I was ready to leave, but kept on going. That's why I got my ass handed to me in the back alley, where I saw a limousine smoking over the grease-stained bricks of the street. Me, sticking out like a sore junkie in my royal blue suit, walking back to get a peek at the goods, likely drunk as far as they knew. They'd probably already had too many bozos hobbling back there for a chance at Dorothy. I just waited longer than the rest and lost my inhibitions against a calm stroll to her carriage. She had made eye contact with me, hadn't she? We had some shared dream, a secret palaver. I'll admit I had my pistol out when I approached the car. The roughs took me down quick, kicking me over and over. I pissed blood the next morning and found I had a loose tooth when I got the courage to try my tongue at it. It was unprofessional what I'd done, trusting a hallucination for guidance. But I couldn't shake this feeling like I'd seen something important, something true. I'd spoken to Dorothy in the hallucination, and though it wasn't real, I kept calling back on it like a true memory, something to hold on to. As if she were my possession, and she waited in my bed for me to come home, tied like an antidote to my fundamental loneliness, feeding this tapeworm void proteins of lost wishes that could never fill what had no bottom. The illusion of her fed me fine, so why break it? 'Cause I had a job to do. The illusion of her could stay at my apartment, but I had to find the real her and take a picture and show Tony Twofingers his daughter was not fucking everyone in town, but was doing something else, helping them somehow, while also protecting that secret from him, from everyone. How to do all that? I thought for a good long while, shot that blue shit again, smoked 30 cigarettes, and decided I needed another suit for this evening's activities. "Not that it's any of my business," Freddie said in the mirrored changing room as he flicked the collar of my red tuxedo, "but a man of business wants to know if he's failing a faithful patron." "Freddie," I said, "I need a favor." Freddie shrugged with his mouth. "I don't say yes till I know what it is. Not that it's any Dorothy," I said. Freddie looked away. "Dorothy, can't say I know a Dorothy, Jack." "You know everything, Freddie," I said. "And I think she's in trouble, and I think you know what that means. in trouble with her father, and I want to help her. I stepped away from Freddie then. I handed him a piece of paper. I'll be in the typewriter network tonight at 8. This is the keyword for the shared space. If you want to help, if you stand where I think you stand, then meet me there. I started for the door, opening it to the brighter outer store, but hesitated. And Freddie, I said, It's nobody's business. Then I left his shop, red as the sky outside. I dialed Burrion on my drive back to the apartment. "Hello," a female voice said. "Hey, Burrion there? Have you tried fishing in Rainfall Lake? Rainfall Lake was crafted by Gustav Franz in 1941, right here in the heart of Chicago. Like a giant waterfall, Rainfall Lake falls forever down, but the vibrational sink at the bottom prevents any who might fall from hurting themselves. The fish stay in the flow of water, while you could slide all the way down and take the steps at the bottom of the sink back to the top. Try fishing or swimming at Rainfall Lake. Hello, have you tried fishing?" "Son of a bitch," I said, snapping the flip phone closed. I tried again, but got the same damned AI ad. No, I had not been fishing at Rainfall Lake. The place was a cesspool, and a kid had fucking died there back in 1987. I got back to the apartment and plugged the nerve wires of my Smith Corona into my steel spine. I typed in Burrion's keyword. Him being a pusher, it was something like 12 numbers, the word Tomcat, and a variation of other characters that I won't bother writing down here, though I do have it memorized. The vibrational frequency of the keyword hummed within the typewriter, then within me. Images swam up in my mind as those frequencies released the appropriate chemicals in my brain, and the scent memories, smell, touch, sight, coalesced. The keyword does most of the work if you're not a clairvoyant hacker, which I am not. I need assistance, like most, to access the shared spaces of the typewriter network. If you can write well, you can make your own chemicals through word association, putting you in a flow state, endorphins and dopamine flooding your spine and ending in your fingers. I'm no writer, though, so my forays are nothing fancier than whatever the designer of the space puts in. It smelled like smoke and burnt popcorn. The carpet was soft and thick beneath my feet. The air was cold. Blue and yellow lights fought for dominance over stained walls and no furniture. I waited for Burrion in a corner. A small message with the keyword and a code representing my name would type itself out through his typewriter, and he could either join me in the shared space or ignore the message. "Back for more already, white boy," Burrion said. "White boy," I said. Burrion shrugged. "I want to know what it is." Burrion grunted, folding arms and smiling. "That all you got?" I said. "White boy?" "You like it," Burrion said, pointing and waggling his fingers at me as if he told me so. "Ah, you like it. Glad I made you." "Burrion, you ever try something like that again, I'll kill you in your sleep." "Oh, tough guy." "You know I'm good for it." "Sure," he said, "but you like it." "It's good shit, but it took me into a fucking acid trip or something." Burrion shrugged, pouting out his lips. "I have heard this. Some see color. You see color, Jack?" "You're a motherfucker, you know that." "My mother says bad words are sign of blazon." "Yeah, well, your mother sounds like a real cunt." Burrion's face twitched at that. Finally broke that cool Slovakian exterior. "What is it, Burrion? I could have come to your house, but I had some goddamn respect," I said. "You shot me up with some shit I never asked for, and now I want some answers." Outside the shared space, back in my apartment room, I could feel my fingers aching from mashing down the typewriter keys. Burrion side-eyed me for a while before answering. "It's Blue 7. New. Cartel is pushing in response to dwindling funds after giving up precious fentanyl." "The poor things," I said, spitting. Burrion pointed 2 fish knife hands at his chest. "They come to me, tell me if I want to stay in business. Only thing I sell is this Blue 7. Say customers will thank me, but can only give to them in syringe. Burrion asks for liquid vial, men say no and give me needles. Burrion shrugs shoulders. What am I to do? They threaten me, Jack. What am I to do? They tell me to force it down their throats or they tie noose to mine. What am I? All right, I said, rubbing my eyes. So you got forced. I'll just consider it true for the sake of trudging faster through your goddamn molasses talk. It's true, Berrien protested. Would you calm your shit? I said I'm considering it true, didn't I? I said. Now, what does it do? Why did I see the color blue? Why did I have that goddamn dream about Dorothy at the radar lounge? I left out. Berrien scratched at his chin. You know how the typewriters send vibrational frequencies into spine? He said. I nodded. And how clairvoyants don't need keywords. Right, I said, growing impatient. Hold your nuts, Jack. So it lets you hear frequency hidden to most. Lets you feel the ones from other side. Berrien studied me like you might a cow that bit you once, then added, if you believe in such superstition. I'd just been pulled through the ground by the demon outside the Chicago port. I'd believed for years. So it wasn't just a dream, I said. What's that? Dream? No dream. Whatever you saw leak through. Dorothy leaking through, I thought. All right, I said. All good then? Berrien said. I ran my hands through my hair. Meaning I wrote out myself running my hands through my hair so that the information would print off on Berrien's typewriter. I wanted him to see the exasperation. Yeah, fine, I said. Berrien raised his eyebrows. You should try while hooked in. Heard it's wild. Yeah? Why don't you fucking try then? As your little old Petey say, tit for tat, Berrien said, smiling. But I was not raised to be Junkie Jack. Then Berrien was gone. I waited a moment in that desolate shared space, then unplugged from the network, thought for a moment, then hooked back in using the keyword I'd given Freddie Ficello. He was already there. A white room just for talking, but secure. I see you can't type a suit, he said. I looked down. I could only manage a generic black suit verging on two-dimensional. I shrugged, opened my mouth, but Freddie held a hand up to stop me. You know, Freddie said, combing down his mustache, I like you, Jack. I like you a lot. That's why I didn't have your throat slit after you, for lack of a better phrase, split staff. I held my hands up. Thing is, I like Winnie more, Jack. More than most. So I gotta ask that you let this one go. It's not just about you, or Tony, or Dorothy, or the radar lounge. It's the biggest fucking thing in this country, and we don't need it all blown on you. What the fuck, I said. You care about it, Jack. You care about me. Just drop this one. I'll pay the difference. Freddie said with a shrug. This is the most forward he'd ever been, and not once had he said it was none of his business. I ripped the nerve wires from my back, panting. Fuck Tony, fuck Freddie, and fuck Berrien. I needed to talk to her all the more now. My Dorothy, my Winnie, whoever it was, sobbing over the saxophone in the middle of some great black abyss with me, locking eyes and telling me I could not have her, and that she wasn't who I thought. Who was she then? I went back to the docks. Her car was parked. I shot up with the blue stuff again, felt the rush of clean, relaxed, energetic euphoria. Nothing turned blue, not yet, but I had a feeling maybe that's what I'd need to keep away from any probing underground hands. Worth a shot anyway. I'd heard it was from another plane of existence, so if this shit could show that kind of stuff to me, maybe I'd see it coming, I don't know. Like I said, worth a shot. The extension of the proconsul's pet did not reach up and grab me. Winnie's Toyota sat parked there at the bottom of the road near the water. There was no sound but the quiet breath of tide coming in. I hadn't even brought my camera. There was no squeak, no rocking of the car as I approached. I reached for the handle, hesitated, reached again, and opened the door. Then I saw a flash of blue beneath me, moving like green frequency on naval sonar. He won't hurt you now, said a voice soft and rasping, quiet like a saxophone in a blue mood. I looked up. She faced out to the bay, her curtain of blonde hair obscuring her face from view. She wore nothing but her saxophone and red heels, driver's seat pulled back to fit the bronze instrument. Her red painted nails rested, one set on the windowsill, the other on the gear shift. You can climb on in, she said, and as she turned to me, she smiled. She had vampiric canines, and I hesitated again. Her eyes were the same shade of ruby as her shoes, as the smog that covered Chicago and healed the sick. I won't hurt you, Jack. We've already spoken once, don't you remember? I wasn't sure we had, I said. Her smile deepened, and I fell in love with her for good then as she said, Jack, just get in the goddamn car. I obliged, closing the door behind me, keeping my gaze on the waves of Lake Michigan and away from her naked form. Your father wanted to know what you were up to, I said. You are Winnie, right? I'm not batshit. Sometimes I'm Winnie, she said. Just now I'm Dorothy, and Dorothy is a fatherless child. I laughed at that. What's funny? She said. You're both. I am, she said, and you're more than just Junkie Jack. Yeah, who else? She laughed low in her throat. Give me your ears and maybe I'll tell you. I couldn't help but turn to her then like a bug to light. Her canines like snaggle teeth hung over her bottom lip, and she stared out of heavy eyes. Give you my ears? I said. I want you to listen fully to everything I do for the next hour. Can you do that, Jack? Can you give me your ears? I examined her fully then, top to bottom. You can have my ears, I said. She could have whatever she wanted. She climbed on her knees, swinging the sax from her lap to her back, leaned over, and I thought she'd kiss me, but she took my face in her hands, turned my head, and placed my earlobe between her lips instead, and pulled. I clutched my thighs with my hands. There was a popping sound, and then she let go of that ear, turned my head, and repeated the job on the other, and this time I lost my composure. It's okay, I saw her mouth as she pulled away. There was a great silence, and I thought my loss of composure had just been so intense I'd momentarily lost my hearing, but I became more concerned as she put the saxophone to her lips, blew, and I heard nothing. The saxophone turned blue, but Winnie, Dorothy, turned gold and started glowing. She rocked back and forth in the seat, dancing. I tried shouting at her, but I couldn't even feel the vibration of my voice. There were no vibrations, not even from the rocking car. I knew it was moving, but I could not feel it, only see it. What is happening to me? I mouthed. Dorothy's eyes flicked to me before she closed them again and went on blowing soundlessly into the saxophone. Now the color faded from everything, turning black and gray. I could not feel, though I tried to find the door handle to escape. My equilibrium was shot, and I only slammed my open palm against the window. I didn't feel that either, but saw black liquid spilling from a gray wound in my knuckle. I looked out over the bay to the skyline like a rabid dog, like a drunk, like a junkie, eyes rolling, tongue lolling out of my mouth. And for a moment, as my eyes landed on the proconsul's pet next to the Sears Tower, I thought I caught that enormous upward-facing mouth in a grin, not a grimace, and then I fell out. When I woke again, I was still in Winnie's Toyota. The world was gray, but sound was slowly returning. Winnie was a husk of her former self, like the mud of a wasp's nest. I felt a sob reaching up from the depths of my gut to rip at my throat, and I reached a shaky hand over to touch her shoulder. She collapsed like an ashen log, the saxophone dropped into the floorboard of the driver's seat. She was gone. It smelled like a nursing home, all that dead skin, and I coughed through my dry, tearless sobs. When I got hold of myself, I took the saxophone, walked back to my Oldsmobile, and drove it over to Tony Twofingers' house. I rang the bell. It's 3 a.m. What in the hell? Oh, it's you, Jack. Everything all right? Tony said with sleep-slanted eyes. His eyes slid down to the sax in my hands. I handed it over and left without another word. He called after me, but I didn't care just then. I would refund him everything he'd spent. I hadn't solved the case, at least not to his satisfaction, though in a way I had, and he was the real fuckbag in all of this. I drank a cup of coffee with the sunrise, smoking cigarettes on the highest hill in Chicago, Twin Killer Peak, where you could see the full body, top to bottom, of the proconsul's pet. Like a mountain it sat, black and chained and leaking red smog. Most of its many eyes were closed, but there were at least 3 that stared right at me. They were Dorothy, Take Me Home, Ruby Red. I knew I would never hear music the same. My fingers were numb at the tips and getting no better. The coffee I could smell only faintly. I even shot heroin, the blue one, the best dope I'd ever had the pleasure of putting in my arm. It didn't do much more than relieve me of a faint headache, and even the headache hadn't penetrated some wall of suppression that permeated every sense inside me. That part of me had been fried, and I suppose that was okay. Maybe that's why she did it. The coffee was tasteless, and the proconsul's pet let out another plume of healing gas. It did not heal me of this, no. Nothing comes free, and I suppose I had been paid. With Winnie, with Dorothy, and she was still with me. I looked into the proconsul pet's eyes and smiled at the memory of sensation and illusion. Dorothy took me home, and there ain't no place like it.